How's it going, fellow Helldivers? Today we got a new update for Helldivers 2, and while this is a minor patch, it actually updates and fixes several things that many of us have been waiting for. Now, I'm gonna immediately start rattling these fixes and changes off, but do remember, if you want the latest news regarding Helldivers 2, then remember to subscribe to MrHulthen, as I will keep covering this game in the foreseeable future. Alright, so the new patch notes start off saying, fresh new patch notes, Helldivers, major updates, planetary hazards active. Many planets now have additional environmental challenges that will appear at random while you are deployed, from fire tornadoes to meteor showers and many more. Now, it has to be mentioned that I haven't had the time to try this patch out because it just released a few minutes ago, but I have to say that it sounds really cool and I can't wait to dive into my next match. And then on balancing, it says eradicate missions. Eradicate missions now require more kills and enemies spawn more often. The time to complete the mission was previously shorter than intended and should now usually take twice as long to complete. So for any of you guys who felt like the eradicate missions were too short, well, there you have it. And if you're wondering what the eradicate missions are, those are the missions that last around 10 minutes where you have to just kill as many enemies as possible. And it's a fairly simple objective, but I do agree that it was a little bit short. Okay, so for weapon changes, we actually have some buffs and unfortunately some nerfs. But here it says primary, secondary, and support weapons. Breaker decreased magazine capacity from 16 to 13 and increased recoil from 30 to 55. So that's a pretty heavy nerf for the breaker shotgun. And I think this is going to make sure that people stop using the breaker because it is very much a meta weapon right now. Now, the Railgun, unfortunately, has received a pretty big nerf as well. So it says here that it has decreased armor penetration, decreased damage against durable enemy parts. So it's definitely not going to be as effective in bringing down chargers, hulks, tanks, and bile titans. However, this opens up some possibilities for other weapons because the flamethrower has gotten an increased damage per second by 50%. Now that is pretty huge. And I can imagine the flamethrower now becoming much more deadly against hordes of enemies, especially the Terminids. Now, the laser cannon is a weapon that I've always wanted to use more, and it has also received a buff where it says increased damage against durable enemy parts, increased armor penetration, and improved ergonomics. So it seems like the laser cannon is supposed to balance out that the railgun has now gotten a nerf. And I actually like this change because that means we can get some variation to our gameplay because of course, everybody's been running around with a railgun to deal with all the heavily armored enemies, but now the laser cannon sounds like it could actually be viable. The Punisher has gotten an increased total ammo capacity from 40 to 60, increased stagger force, increased damage from 40 per bullet to 45 per bullet. And this again is pretty major when it comes to buffing other weapons, and I really can't wait to get into trying the Punisher as well because that's also one of those weapons I wish had been better before. And then we have the Breaker Spray and Pray, which is the alternate version of the Breaker shotgun. And it has gotten increased armor penetration, increased fire rate from 300 to 330, increased number of pellets from 12 to 16 per shot, but it has gotten a decreased magazine size from 32 to 26. Ironically, you're not going to be able to pray and spray as much as you've been able to before, but the fact that the shotgun now is technically stronger, you might not have to spray and pray as much overall, which is always a good thing. So for stratagems, the Energy Shield Backpack has gotten an increased delay before recharging, and that is yet another nerf. So you can expect to have decreased survivability when using the shield backpack, unfortunately, but I guess they have to balance the game somehow. Would have preferred if they didn't nerf it because I do think while it is pretty strong, it's definitely extremely useful, but you also lose out on other things if you choose the shield backpack instead of any other sort of stratagem. So I felt like it was already properly balanced, but I guess not. The 380mm and 120mm orbital barrages has increased duration of the bombardment and decreased spread. Decreased spread is a pretty good thing because I can't count on my fingers how many times I've gotten squad killed or killed my squad mates accidentally through the orbital barrages. So this is a pretty major buff, and I'm expecting to see a lot more people use the barrages now. At least I will. And so I'm gonna rattle off some other fixes. And here it says fixed armor rating values not reducing damage as intended. This, of course, is pretty huge because armor values did not work at all before, at least from my knowledge. So it seems like the heavy armors might now be viable. So if you want to be a walking tank, you most likely can now. Fixed certain bug holes, including stalker nests, that were unnecessarily hard to destroy. This is another really good fix because one thing that has annoyed the hell out of me is that some holes for some reason just don't take damage sometimes when you try to destroy them, so hopefully they work as intended now. And then we have fixed anti-aliasing toggle not working on PS5, balanced lighting across all planets to solve cases where the game was too dark. That's a really good fix, thank you. Improved flashlight efficiency, increased visibility during sand rain weather on Errata Prime, updated tutorial materials and lighting, improved cases where some materials could look blurry if lighting graphic settings was set to low, fixed timing issues that could occur in the Extract E710 primary objective, changed button interaction behavior for buttons in bunker POIs, that being points of interest. Helldivers will now let go of the button after holding it for a few seconds. Fixed some cases of large assets floating if the ground beneath them was blown up. Helldivers standing next to ICBMs during launch will get properly toasty with the chance of not so spontaneous combustion. Okay, so if you stand next to a nuclear missile that's about to fire, you're probably gonna burn up now. Fixed unthrowable snowballs after ragdolling. Fixed being able to use grenades after drowning. Well, that's an odd one. Camera no longer locked on the player's own corpse and blocking spectator mode. Helldivers now take damage from fire, gas, etc. generated by other players. Okay, so we can expect a lot more team kills. Armor no longer stretches when dismembered. Okay, that's really good because that has happened to me quite a few times. It isn't really a big problem, but it kind of takes you out of the game for a bit whenever that happens. Now below we see some known issues as well. There are several things that they haven't had the chance to fix yet, but they're obviously working really hard over at Arrowhead Studios. But I gotta say, I'm really happy with these fixes. I'm kind of disappointed in some of the nerfs here, but I take it that they're trying to balance the game as much as possible now that the connection issues really aren't that prevalent anymore. But I can't wait to get into the game and try all of this out. And again, for any future updates regarding Helldivers 2, remember to subscribe to MrHulthen. Signing out.